Imagine a world where the Red Sea, that ancient ribbon of trade and conquest, became the undisputed domain of a mighty African empire. For centuries, the Aksumite Empire stood at the crossroads of Africa, Arabia, India, and Rome. In this alternate timeline, that crossroads does not fade. It becomes the center of the world. Image_shorts_1, a lone ancient figure seen from behind, silhouetted against a golden Red Sea sunset, traditional East African robes, dhow sails in the distance, emotional atmospheric vertical composition, 916, no readable text. Image_shorts_2, two robed Aksumite scholars walking away from camera toward a monumental stiller field, pointing at carved reliefs, warm afternoon light, ancient stone textures, vertical composition, 916, no readable text. Image_shorts_3, extreme close-up of an ancient gold, Aksumite-style coin resting on dark cloth, abstract royal bust in relief, aged patina, warm studio lighting, no readable inscription, vertical macro composition, 916. But history as we know it saw Aksum's influence weaken under pressure from shifting trade routes, rival powers, and the rise of new empires. What if, at one critical moment, Aksum secured permanent control over the Red Sea? What if the sea between Africa and Arabia became an Aksumite lake? Image_shorts_1, a silhouetted Aksumite warrior standing on a rocky cliff overlooking the Red Sea, scanning the horizon, dramatic backlighting, vertical composition 916, no readable text. Image_shorts_2, two Aksumite merchants in silhouette at a bustling port market, indistinct forms, amphorae and trade goods around them, atmospheric coastal light, vertical composition 916, no readable text. Image_shorts_3, extreme close-up of an ivory carving with intricate East African geometric motifs, aged ivory surface, warm directional lighting, vertical macro composition, 916, no readable text. In this alternate timeline, a world of speculation, not history, we explore the ripple effects of an enduring Aksumite dominion. How would global trade, religion, naval power, and the fate of Africa itself have changed? What if the Red Sea belonged to Aksum? Image_shorts_1, a cloaked figure from behind studying a large, unrolled map on a table, symbolic routes visible but no readable text, candlelit chamber, vertical composition, 916. Image_shorts_2, two figures in silhouette, one pointing at a section of a large, stylized Red Sea region map, no readable labels, atmospheric lamplight, vertical composition, 916. Image_shorts_3, extreme close-up of aged papyrus with abstract faded markings resembling trade diagrams, no readable script, warm candlelight, vertical macro composition, 916. Our journey begins between the 3rd and 6th centuries CE in the Ethiopian highlands. This was the heartland of the Aksumite Empire, one of the great powers of late antiquity. Its cities rose among mountains, terraces, churches, markets, and towering stone monuments. Aksum's strategic genius lay in its geography. From the port of Adulis, it connected the African interior to Arabia, India, the Roman world, and the wider Indian Ocean. Whoever controlled this corridor did not merely control the coastline, they controlled the movement of wealth. Yet Aksum's position also brought conflict. Across the water, the Himyarite kingdom of southern Arabia stood as both rival and prize. The Red Sea was not an empty highway. It was a contested frontier of ships, faiths, taxes, ports, and power. In our history, King Kaleb of Aksum launched a major campaign across the Red Sea against Himyar in the 6th century. In this timeline, that invasion succeeds more decisively. Aksumite soldiers do not merely punish a rival kingdom, they secure a permanent bridgehead on the Arabian coast. Instead of withdrawing after victory, Aksum fortifies the western edge of Arabia. Ports are rebuilt, watchtowers rise, garrisons are installed, and Aksumite ships begin patrolling the narrow gates of the Red Sea. A campaign becomes an occupation becomes strategy. Aksumite commanders understand the opportunity. From these bases, they can watch every sail moving between the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean. No spyglass, no modern instrument, only disciplined patrols, signal fires, and officers trained to read the sea. The profits are immediate. Spices, silk, ivory, gold, incense, ceramics, and grain flow through Aksumite-supervised ports. Taxes enrich the imperial treasury, and merchants from Africa, Arabia, and India learn that the safest route is now the Aksumite route. Aksum grows richer than it ever did in our timeline. Its capital expands, its elite grows more confident, and its military becomes increasingly naval. But wealth brings attention. Every empire that depends on the Red Sea must now reckon with Aksum. For a time, a Pax Aksumitica settles over the Red Sea. Merchant ships sail under protection, piracy declines, and ports flourish under an imperial order backed by patrol fleets. Aksum is no longer just a highland kingdom with access to the sea, it is a maritime power. The port of Adulis becomes one of the greatest commercial cities of its age. Warehouses, customs houses, shipyards, markets, and foreign quarters crowd the coast. From here, Aksumite officials regulate the commerce of continents. Culture follows commerce. Gayez, Aksumite Christianity, East African artistic forms, and Red Sea customs spread through merchant families, port communities, and coastal churches. A shared Red Sea identity begins to form, not uniform, but connected. But no sea empire rises without rivals. To the east, Sassanid Persia watches Aksum's Red Sea dominance with suspicion. Persian envoys, merchants, and military planners begin testing the edges of Aksumite influence. Then a new force begins to rise in Arabia. Across desert towns, caravan routes, and tribal networks, a powerful religious and political movement gathers strength. For Aksum, this is not yet an invasion. It is a warning that the world around the Red Sea is changing. As the Arabian Peninsula unites under a new faith and new political authority, the old balance of power collapses. Empires that once competed through diplomacy now face a transformed frontier. Aksum's Arabian bases suddenly stand in the path of history. The first pressure comes at the coast. Aksumite fortresses on the Arabian side of the Red Sea prepare for siege, diplomacy, or both. Signal fires burn from towers, and warships move into defensive formation near the harbor mouths. Envoys arrive before armies. Arab diplomats bring demands for safe passage, recognition, and the end of Aksumite pressure on Red Sea routes. The Aksumite emperor of this era listens carefully. He understands that this is not a border dispute. It is a choice between war and survival. To strengthen his position, the emperor orders a demonstration of naval power. Across the Red Sea, Aksumite dhows, warships, supply vessels, and signal boats fill the horizon. The message is clear. Aksum cannot conquer the desert, but it can close the sea. A limited naval clash proves the point. Aksumite ships use currents, coastal forts, and coordinated patrols to trap a smaller opposing fleet. The battle is not enough to decide the future of Arabia, but it is enough to prove that the Red Sea cannot be taken cheaply. The emerging Caliphate recalculates. Land campaigns can move across deserts and cities, but the Red Sea is different. Aksum's fleet, forts, and port network make direct conquest costly. Commanders begin to ask whether control of the sea is worth the price. Inside Aksum, the debate is just as intense. Priests warn against surrendering sacred influence. Merchants fear losing access to Arabian markets. Generals argue for a decisive strike. But scholars and diplomats see another possibility. Hold the sea, but avoid endless war. Pause. The emperor faces the hardest decision of his reign. Aksum can fight for every port and risk exhaustion, or it can turn victory at sea into a treaty that protects its future. He chooses not surrender, but strategy. The agreement that follows changes history. Aksum recognizes the new power of Arabia on land. In return, its Red Sea naval dominance, ports, and trade rights are formally respected. It is not friendship, it is not submission, it is a balance of necessity. The Red Sea is divided not by walls, but by spheres of power. Aksum dominates the maritime corridor. The Caliphate expands through land routes, the Mediterranean, and the wider Indian Ocean. Two civilizations avoid total war by accepting each other's strengths. With the Red Sea secured, Aksum becomes the gatekeeper between the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean. Every ship carrying spices, silk, ivory, gold, incense, or grain must account for Aksumite ports, taxes, and naval patrols. The empire expands in a new form. It does not need to annex every desert or mountain. Instead, it controls ports, islands, customs houses, and strategic straits. Aksum becomes a maritime empire stitched together by harbors. Aksum's capital transforms as wealth pours inland. New stone buildings rise, aqueducts and public plazas expand, and the old stelae stand beside a more ambitious imperial city. The highlands become the administrative heart of a sea empire. Trade routes bend around Aksumite power. Goods from Southeast Asia, India, Arabia, Africa, and the Mediterranean converge through ports governed or protected by Aksum. The Red Sea becomes the empire's bloodstream. A new Red Sea identity emerges. East African, Arabian, Indian, and Mediterranean influences blend in dress, worship, language, and law. Jazz does not become universal, but it becomes one prestigious language among merchants, priests, and administrators. Byzantium adjusts quickly. Instead of treating Aksum as a distant Christian ally, it treats Aksum as an indispensable naval and commercial partner. Diplomacy across the Red Sea becomes as important as diplomacy across the Mediterranean. The Caliphate also changes course. Unable to dominate the Red Sea outright, it strengthens routes through the Persian Gulf, the Mediterranean, and the wider Indian Ocean. The Islamic world still rises, but its maritime expansion develops around an enduring Aksumite barrier. Along the East African coast, Aksumite-influenced trading networks reach farther south. Port towns absorb highland, coastal, Arabian, and Indian influences centuries earlier. The Swahili coast does not become purely Aksumite, but it develops in a world where Aksum remains powerful. When European explorers eventually round Africa, they do not find weak, isolated ports waiting to be dominated. They encounter fortified harbors, experienced naval powers, and an African empire that has spent centuries mastering oceanic trade. This continuity changes African history. Instead of a story of decline and isolation, Aksum becomes a bridge between antiquity, the medieval world, and the age of exploration. Its stone traditions evolve rather than vanish. By the early modern period, the Aksumite world is no longer a forgotten empire of the past. It is a long-thriving civilization with ports, scholars, churches, fleets, merchants, and diplomatic reach across continents. The world map changes. The Red Sea remains an African-controlled artery rather than a corridor passed between distant empires. The routes from India to the Mediterranean, from Africa to Arabia, and from the highlands to the sea all pass through Aksumite power. History often remembers empires that conquered vast lands, but sometimes power comes from controlling the narrow waters everyone else must cross. In this timeline, Aksum's greatest weapon is not only its army or its faith, it is its command of connection. Every empire has a story history forgot. This has been Historix Vault. More are coming. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.